As the economy reopens, companies are going to have to deal with employees who come back to work and might be sick, so many of them are now taking matters into their own hands. Fox Business Network's Christina Partsenevelis has more.
Companies around the U.S. are exploring methods to contain the spread of the virus so they can remain open once the lockdowns are lifted. Amazon is using thermal cameras at its warehouses to speed up the screening process of feverish workers. The tech giant also announced it was building a lab and creating its own COVID-19 diagnostic test. Apple announced there's a possibility they could create their own COVID test. For now, they have plans to take temperatures and maintain social distancing once all locations reopen. And it's not just tech. Emirates Airline mandates passengers have to wear face masks and gloves. They're even conducting blood tests of passengers to identify antibodies in immune systems. If detected, antibodies could indicate a passenger is battling an infection. Another airline, Etihad, is launching check-in kiosks that would check passenger temperatures and heart rates. The check-in kiosk would automatically stop the process if vital signs showed potential illness. And not all firms can administer their own tests, but many can take the temperature of employees. Tyson Foods has walk-through temperature scanners. The alarm goes off if an employee has a fever. Even here in New York, the NYPD is taking the temperature of police officers before their shift begins. And if you're wondering, it is legal to ask employees about their symptoms and take their temperature. This could become the new norm once America reopens. In New York, Christina Partsenevelis, Fox News.